Good afternoon, Santa Cruz and KSEO listeners. This is Dr. Duncan McCollum coming from you, and it's a beautiful day here in Santa Cruz. I'm very excited to carry on with a theme that we've been working on in the last several weeks, and that's bringing on some amazing health experts to help us understand how to boost our immune system and what we can do to actually overcome all the stuff that we're hearing about the COVID virus and in general, how do we get our bodies healthy so we can live a healthy, happy life? So today I have Professor Brian Peskin on, amazing gentleman. I first met you, doctor, about 2017 at a Revelation Health event with Dr. Dan Papa. I've seen you talk a few times since then, and we've had the opportunity to have a sit down with a few doctors to really discuss some stuff that we don't normally hear out in the world. So I'm just going to let the audience know who you are. Professor Brian Peskin graduated from MIT with an electrical engineering degree. At one point, his wife developed diabetes at a young age, and he realized that there wasn't a lot of solution to this. So you went into the medicine realm to use your degree to figure out a science behind what's going on with medicine, and you've really focused on essential fatty acids. And I love this word. You specialize in pharmacognosy, which I had to look up.
Yes.
And that's medical drugs obtained from plants or other natural sources, which brought you to studying the eicosanoids, or the EFAs, essential fatty acids, and brought you to understanding the parent essential oils, the PEOs, which you've written a book on. And you really opened the eyes of a lot of doctors and a lot of practitioners by bringing to the forefront the fact that the fish oils that, 30 years ago when I began practice, we wanted everybody to take fish oils. The medical world said no. We finally talked them into it, and now we find out that they're not healthy for us. So it's crazy how things turn around. So you were able to help your wife reverse her diabetes naturally. And, I'd like to your book is called the PEO Solution, the Parent Essential Fatty Acid Solution, and you co-authored it with Robert Rowan, who's also an amazing guy who I got to notice. So why don't you go ahead and just start off telling us what you know, where you're heading, and we'll just see what we can do to help our audience.
Well, sure. To me, the biggest nutritional deficiency in America and the world is the parent EFAs, and that's parent omega-6, parent omega-3. And I had to coin that term because everybody is using the wrong term for EFAs. DHA, EPA, which are the components of fish oil, are not EFAs. EFA stands for essential fatty acids. So I like calling it parent essential oils or essential fatty acid. The key thing is both of those, the parent omega-6, parent omega-3, have to come from food. Our body can't make them. What's the big deal? Have 100 trillion cells. In every one of those 100 trillion cells is what's called the bilipid membrane, and 25 to 33% is composed of the PEOs. So they are the actual brick and mortar of every cell, every tissue, every organ in your body. And if that is not fully functional, nothing will work properly and no modality of treatment will be maximized. So I started looking at this, and the way I actually came up with it, it was playing around with different oils. I knew they had to be important because of the work of Dr. Otto Warburg. We'll talk about that if you want, with cancer. And I was starving one day, and it was just, get me some fast food garbage. I don't care what it is. And then I took some of these oils, and when they got back, I didn't need the junk food. And it was like, I've got to learn more about them. So I've been doing this for about close to 25 years now. Not a pastime, not a hobby. It's not for amateurs. There's very few people that study EFAs and eicosanoids. Eicosanoids are the derivatives. I'll talk a lot about that with the inflammation. So the EFAs, the parents, are the brick and mortar of everything. And their derivatives, which means they come from the parents, make all kinds of important things. And the most important one is PGE1. That's called prostaglandin series 1. It is your biggest anti-inflammatory there is. So being in chiropractic, you get a lot of people with pain. You need this. The other big thing it does, it's a vasodilator. So it opens the channel to get the blood going. We have a big problem with lack of blood flow today. There's all kinds of disorders that have minimal blood flow. Wound healing, ED problems, brain fog problems. They're not getting the blood flow. So this gives you maximum blood flow and maximum anti-inflammatory. The other side, and the omega-6 series, is from arachidonic acid, and people have gotten a bad rap on arachidonic acid. There's no problem with it at all. The more parent omega-6 you have, the less arachidonic acid you actually need. And arachidonic acid makes what's called prostacyclin, which makes your blood platelets not be able to stick together, not be able to stick to an arterial wall. So if those conditions happen, and the parent omega-6 is a major oxygenator. So if you're getting maximum oxygen at the cell level, your platelets can't stick together and can't stick to the arterial wall. It also makes your arteries more flexible, like a balloon instead of a straw. I don't know how you get a heart attack. It is critical that anybody with CVD needs these oils. So if you go, well, what about the omega-3 side? Well, typically in the body, the major organs have 4-to-1 parent omega-6 to parent omega-3, 4 times more than parent omega-6. The muscles are about 6.5 times more, and muscles are 50% of your body weight. You also have fat stores. So if you're not getting a lot of food, or if you're not getting a lot of the right fat, your body has storage.
So let me just stop for a minute, because you're throwing out so much amazing information, and my audience is very well educated, but they also have been told that the omega-3s are something that we need. And when I was in school, they taught us that the omega-3 was because there was a certain bond on the third carbon, and it was very difficult for our body to make those. However, you've said that when you have the correct omega-6s, the parent omega-6s, that come from
or the parent omega-3, the body makes all the derivatives on its own.
So the parent omega-3s come from fish.
Parent omega-3 comes from plants. Parent omega-6 comes from plants. Okay. No fish. Now, fish oil, it's antifreeze for a fish. Now I'll get back to that in a minute. But think about the temperature a fish lives in. Frigid water. Mm-hmm. So it is antifreeze for a fish. Nature has 2 ways to go: long-chain fatty acids. So because if you put these oils in a freezer, they don't freeze. Or alcohol. Vodka in the freezer doesn't freeze either. So if you had the alcohol, you'd have a drunk fish. So the long-chain fatty acids, and actually Dr. Rowan said, Brian, there is warm water fish, like 70 degrees. There's 14 times less DHA EPA in the warm water fish than the cold water fish. What are we at? 98.6. Fish oil goes rancid spontaneously at room temperature. And what you're talking about is they'll say we have an impaired enzyme reaction. It's called the delta-6 desaturase. And if you have a disease, if you're alcoholic, you're undergoing chemotherapy, that will be impaired to a smaller extent, not ruined, but it will be impaired, and you need every ounce of power you have. So I like having an oil blend that has GLA because it can bypass that. So it's a great trick if anybody has an impaired delta-6 desaturase. But the derivatives, they didn't have good analysis methods 20 years ago. You need what's called high-resolution chromatography. And they thought all the parents would go to derivatives. They weren't even looking at the cell itself. They were just looking at what floats around in the bloodstream. And that's the mistake they made. They never thought maybe these parents, the parent omega-6 and parent omega-3, stay that way. It's only less than 1%, less than 1 part in 100 goes to the derivative. So if you look at the amount of parent omega-3 in your body, it's about 3,000 times more in quantity than DHA EPA than any of the derivatives. And even looking at vegetarians that ate no fish, they could convert enough parent omega-3 to get enough EPA, DHA in the bloodstream, about 85% of someone eating a lot of fish. So you don't need this. And what's happening is we're getting pharmacological overdoses on the omega-3 derivatives from fish oil.
Yeah, and we've been told.
Great studies were done. And I'll leave you with this thought, and then I'll have to answer something else. First question I'd be, being an engineer, is how much goes into the brain and the eyes? Because the brain's the biggest depository of DHA, EPA, and so are the eyes. 7.2 milligrams for a big brain person. This is the biggest guy. There's a standard bell curve, 3 standard deviations out, which means the biggest brain person I could see is 7.2 milligrams.
Is that
per
a day? Per day?
A day, that's it. So I'll double it. I'll say, okay, have a little extra reserve. That'll give you enough for the eye, enough for the brain, enough for everything else. Do 15 milligrams. Take a look at the dosages. People are recommending 4 grams a day. People are getting 20 to 500 times overdose, and it will kill you because it displaces the omega-6. So that's the biggest thing with fish oil. It is displacing all the parent omega-6, not the omega-3, the omega-6 in the tissues and organs, and it is killing us.
Yeah, and just for the audience, we've talked a lot about diabetes, about cellular detoxification, about the cell membrane being permeable. And what we know with diabetics is rather than fixing the impaired cell wall, they just keep pushing more and more insulin in there to try to shoot it in with a cannon into the cell. Because of our cell, the membranes have been damaged because of all of not only the rancid omega-3s, but all the other toxins in our environment. And you mentioned earlier that the parent omega-6s, 25 to 33% of our cell walls are made up with these. So when we are consuming these vast amount of omega-3s, fish oils, that go rancid by the time we get them, they start to replace the cell wall with very brittle, toxic omegas that actually will add to our inflammation in our body, add to chronic disease, autoimmune disease, and such like that. So that's really the take home. We got to put the right stuff in our body.
You've hit it right in the head. And what happens is, just imagine a plastic membrane. So the insulin tries to go in and it bounces off. Maybe that's called insulin resistance. So what happens is when you get an overdose of the omega-3 series, it displaces the parent omega-6. And a big article came out talking about cardiolipin in heart tissue, and it gets ruined with fish oil. So that's called congestive heart failure. You don't have the energy. The mitochondria are the energy power plants in every cell. And the article actually said the parent omega-6 rescues the cardiolipin. It's on the inner membrane. It's 100% parent omega-6, but it gets displaced by the overdose of the fish oil. That's the problem with it. Body just doesn't burn it up or shove it somewhere. It's displacing the critical omega-6. And all the fish oil studies, Cochrane, it's the best reviewer of studies in the world, came out a short time ago how worthless fish oil was. And it doesn't matter. The typical MD is still telling you fish oil is okay, regardless of the studies that show it's completely worthless. Doesn't help macular degeneration, doesn't help Alzheimer's, doesn't help cardiovascular disease. It fails every time they do a real study. Most studies aren't worth the paper they're printed on. But if you do a real study, absolutely worthless. So fish oil is not just a zero. It is a poison in the doses they're recommending it.
Yeah.
And it's a -20, and it takes 18 weeks to get the effects of the fish oil out of the cell membrane.
Yeah, there was, this might have been you or at the last place I saw you talk, people were talking about, and I think it was you, when you eat bad oils, it takes something like 14 to 15 weeks to get that bad oil out of your system. So if you go and eat a McDonald's burger or something with rancid oil, that gets put into the cell wall and it clogs up and makes, I love a plastic cell wall that hormones bounce off of because they can't get in. And that little quick bite that you ate is going to affect your body for, you said, quite a few weeks before it gets replaced. If you're
18 weeks. It's 18 weeks. And Dr. Lanz did a study that was very good. It's, radioisotope. You can tag it and see where it goes, how long it lasts. It is in proportion to how much bad oil to good oil. So if I eat 50% junk food oils, and the oils in the supermarket, restaurants, fast food, even the fine restaurants, are all using manufactured, processed, adulterated, non-functional frying oil. And that's all in the omega-6 series. You don't cook with omega-3 oils. They're too reactive. So nobody cooks with flax oil, for example. It just doesn't happen. So sunflower oil, safflower oil, olive oil. Those are the kinds of things people use. And they are all made so they last a long time, and the restaurant doesn't have to throw them away. The problem is they're killing us. So you have to overpower the bad stuff with the good stuff, and it's in direct proportion. You could probably have 25% junk. You don't need to be a monk or anybody perfect, but you better be getting these good oils as a nutritional supplement to guarantee you're getting them. Now, they come from seed oils, flaxseed, sunflower seed, pumpkin seed, coconut seed. They are in food also because the animal that eats the plants has them in there. But you have to ensure they're organic, they're unprocessed. If they're too highly heated up, some of them will become non-functional. So I recommend everybody, for less than $1.50 a day, you can put this problem to bed. And they are phenomenal oxygenators. Dr. Campbell, 1976, great study with cystic fibrosis people, that it's a bad disease, lack of oxygen. How do you kill anything, by the way? Oxygenate, ozone. Dr. Rowan is all about that. So these oils are like being in a hyperbaric chamber 24 hours a day. And
That's
you
amazing.
just take them. That's what they do automatically. It's unbelievable. We have doctors around the world, surgeons around the world, that have the energy to keep going and going and going where they never did. And that's the number one complaint of Americans. I'm exhausted all the time. You should be able to go to bed at midnight and be up at 5 a.m. or 4:30 every day. Boom.
Unbelievable. Doc, we're up against a break here, so we're going to take a quick break. This is Dr. Duncan McCollum, a chiropractor, on Stepping In, and I have Professor Brian Peskin here talking about fish oils and parent omega oils, the omega-6, and how fish oils, it's been a big deception. They're actually harming us because they go rancid at 70 degrees. But not only that, we don't need them in the mass amount that we're taking. So we're going to take a quick break and we'll come back in a few minutes. I just wanted to mention to any of the KSCO listeners out there that my book, New Hope for Sciatica, you can download it for free. I give this to all my patients that come in. It's on Amazon. It's a bestseller. But, if you want to go to McCollumWellness.com, you can download the book for free. And I'd be more than happy to send it to you. And it's the unabridged version because I mentioned COVID in it. And it happened to come out about the same week that the virus hit. Amazon would not publish it till I took my thoughts out about that subject. So you can get that version. And we'll be back in just a couple minutes. Okay, we're back. This is Dr. Duncan McCollum with Stepping In Radio at KSCO, and I have Professor Brian Peskin here, and we're just talking about an amazing subject that there's so much misinformation out there about, and it's fish oils versus, which are omega-3s, versus parent omega-6s, which are vegetable-based, which our body needs.
And the parent omega-3 too. You need both the parents.
Okay.
That's PLA and LAs. The omega-6.
The PLA is omega-3, right?
Yes, the parent. That's the big. There's parents and derivatives. And it's so important. Medical journal article in the chemistry area. This is Nature Reviews Molecular Cell Biology. So a physician doesn't read that. They read New England Journal of Medicine, JAMA, Lancet. Because everybody around the world asks me, Brian, how come you know this stuff and we don't? I said, because I read your journals, but I also read the hard science journals like lipids, essential fatty acids, leukotrienes, prostaglandins. That's something a clinician isn't going to read. You don't have a lot of time. The cell membrane can actually tell. Molecular biologists discover an active role of membrane lipids in health and disease. So here's how bad it is for chronic inflammation. The cell membrane can actually sense if it has the adulterated oils that are wrong, either the adulterated omega-6 or an overdose of the omega-3 series. the DHA EPA, if it gets shoved into there, and it goes into an inflammatory state, low-grade chronic inflammation, day and night. So the body can sense this. There's thermodynamical considerations. How the heck can it do that? It does it by the way it compresses and the way it can. The body's pretty darn good, as you well know. Now, with the omega-6, your entire skin is all parent omega-6. So I hear this stuff, oh, fish oil made my skin smoother. My first comment is, what's the metabolic pathway where it did it? And I usually get a glazed over look. What? What is the metabolic pathway that did it? Because the epithelial tissue, which is your skin, is 100% omega-6.
Wow.
So there's no way on earth fish oil can do that. Also, everybody needs to know the inner lining of the artery.
Yeah.
It's called the intima.
Yeah.
It's the same parent omega-6. That's the reason we have such a great success with heart people, because we're giving the integrity back, and it makes it like your skin. Nothing can stick to your skin. It's impervious to everything. The other thing people need to know is Alzheimer's. Every drug they've ever done fails. Nobody's getting anywhere with it. It is a cardiovascular disease. It's tied to the capillaries in the brain. Capillaries give the nutrition. So that's where all the transfer happens between the oxygen and the nutrition. Guess what? They're 100% parent omega-6. Wow. 100%. So if I have hundreds of millions of these in my brain, without the oxygen, that's where forgetfulness comes from. That's why you have Biden off in the ozone, the poor guy. He doesn't know about this discovery. So nobody should be getting Alzheimer's or dementia. It is physical and it is cardiovascular. It has nothing to do with the beta amyloid. I'll tell you where that comes from. The cell membrane is leaking. It's spilling it out. It's falling apart. Half of every cell membrane is lipid. The other half is protein. There's virtually no carbohydrate in there. So the protein, which is the beta amyloid, is leaking out of the darn thing. I actually just think scraping off.
Because of the inflammation, correct?
Yes.
And I think where a lot of this may confuse people is, you know, when you and I grow up, we were told that, you know, the monounsaturated, hydrogenated oils and all this stuff.
Like margarine.
Yeah, and I call it nickel injected canola oil with yellow dye number 35, right? But the hardening of the arteries that our parents may or may not have gotten came from adulterated oils, a lot of them omega-6s and omega-9s. They're by adulterated, from my understanding, those are basically rancid oils, and they do cause inflammation. But can you give a definition of adulterated so we can understand?
Yeah, the adulterated means non-functional. Now, what they do is they make it where it loses all the oxygen transfer capability. Okay. We need oxygen transfer, and the answer isn't take something so you have, it goes bad in and of itself when it's transferring the oxygen. So your body has antioxidants to fix that, but that's not the answer. The answer is take more of the good stuff every day. So for example, margarine, you could throw out in the garage, leave it for a year, no bacteria, no virus, no animal will touch the stuff because it's plastic. If you talk to a plastics engineer, they'll go, this got the same structure of plastic. So it is horrible. You do not want processed oils at all.
Right.
Butter is what you want. A saturated fat, you know how much saturated fat is in a clogged artery? 0. When I saw this, again, high resolution chromatography, I fell off my chair and went, okay, they're saying it's 0, but maybe the resolution of the chromatography is 20%. So actually it's 19.9%, but because it's not 20, they call it 0. No, they could go down to 0.1%. There's no saturated fat in a clogged artery. How many people are running around, don't eat any saturated fat, it's going to give you a heart attack? How? Saturated means there's no open bonding places. If you know chemistry at all, there's nothing for it to attach to. It can't happen. So we keep getting misled all over the place. It's tragic. It's very, very tragic.
You know, you look at our country, we're rated 47th in the world for health, and the #1 cause of disease, they say, comes from chronic inflammation, even at the cellular level. And toxicity causes that. And when you're eating toxic oils and other pollutants we get, the cell membrane, which is, and people out there listen, the cell membrane is life. the only part of us that are alive are our cells. And if they can't communicate with the outside world, they can't get nutrients in or toxins out, then we are going to become inflamed and we're going to die. We're going to develop autoimmune diseases. We're going to get all kind of weird things like cancers and other things. So, and even Bruce Lipton talks about the cell membrane being so intelligent. And you were mentioning that they're so smart that they know when you have, you know, they know how, if they're in this toxic environment, they're going to actually try to move away from it, or they're going to die. You put them in a healthy environment, they'll start to thrive again.
Absolutely. And there was, I mean, it's so important. Any wound on your body is supposed to heal from your fat stores. Right. And there was a great article. It's called the Developmental Cell, Watch Fat Cells Help Heal a Wound in a Fly. Because they use flies because
I read that. I read that article. It was amazing.
It's unbelievable. Everybody was thinking, oh, fat storage is just sit there and do nothing. No. You get a cut, you should be able to heal that like you wouldn't believe. You get dental work, surgery, any kind of thing, you should heal 30 to 50% faster with very, very little pain. Remember, GLA, anti-inflammatory, the number one thing, so it cuts that down. With COVID, it also cuts the cytokine storm. A lot of people are getting sick with that.
Yeah, well, that's the thing that gets them is the cytokines, right? That's what turns them over into the very fatal conditions versus...
Yeah, it's an overreaction. It's like if you have an allergy or something, you're sneezing.
Yeah.
That's a reaction, but it's overboard. So what I think is the lack of EFAs when somebody was young caused that. So it's hard to bring it back. You can minimize it because I used to be horrible. I live in Houston. We have grasses. When I got down here, I would be bedridden for probably 2 weeks out of the year. And it was horrible. That's gone now with the oils because the sensitivity goes way down. It's unbelievable what these oils do. And like I say, they are fundamental to everything. But your energy for the cells to work need the parent omega-6 in that cardiolipin in the inner membrane. And there's more mitochondria than there are cells because a cell can have hundreds of mitochondria. Yeah. And the omega-3 series is very, very weak. If it's 1/20th of the omega-6 series, I don't even believe it's that strong. They're needed, and your brain does have them, but the average turnover in the brain is 2.5 years. That 7.4 milligrams stays for 2.5 years. So what does that tell you? Number one, we have to have the antioxidants so it doesn't go rancid. It goes rancid at room temperature. Could be the best in the world. Boom. Air hits it at this temperature. It's bad. That's the fish oil smell going through the supermarket in the seafood section, right? Wow. You ever smell that?
Yeah.
And that's even when it's on ice. So you can imagine what it's doing. So that gets in there, and that is a problem. You cannot be overdosed with that. Now, what happens is because people are overdosing suprapharmacological 20 to 500 times overdose of fish oil a day. Put that in perspective. Take 100 aspirin. Tell me how you feel in the morning. Don't do it. I'm facetious because you'll be dead. Yeah. But this is what they're telling people. And one other thing. Fish oil acts like a long-term steroid because I'd lecture a lot, and finally some dermatologists said, you know, Brian, we get good results dermatologically. You know what it's doing? It's acting like a steroid. And it was, my goodness, you don't want this first. You want the parent oils coming in because remember, I told you the skin is 100% parent omega-6.
Yeah.
And that's where you want to go first. If you do steroids, they destroy all the EFA metabolism. So the PGE1 is destroyed, the prostacyclin is destroyed, they shut it down. And the non-steroidal anti-inflammatories called NSAIDs, like your aspirin, you know, things like Tylenol, they do the same thing to a little lesser extent. But you're getting destroyed. If you don't get these oils and you're just eating the standard food in the supermarket, because unless it's organic, it's ruined.
Right.
You have 100 trillion cells and 100 trillion mitochondria not working. I'm amazed alive as an engineer. It's unbelievable to me. Now, we're not alive well, we're sick as heck, but
Right. Half of the country is diabetic or pre-diabetic, and that all that.
Now,
has
let
to
me tell
do-
you, the fish oil is horrible for diabetics.
Yeah.
There was a study, and it's in PEO Solution. The diabetics eating the most oily fish, because this is what everybody was told. You want the oily fish, not the dry fish like cod, were the worst. It made their blood sugar levels go up. And if you look at diabetics, they have elevated levels of DHA EPA because that is why things aren't working. And this is the same study where they looked at the heart with getting too much fish oil in it, and the mitochondrial cardiolipin didn't work. And they said this is mimicking a diabetic. So diabetics have about 70% elevated DHA EPA in their bloodstream. You don't want to be mimicking a diabetic by taking fish oil, because that's what you're doing.
Wow.
You want the opposite. You're absolutely right. The biggest epidemic in America and the world, diabetes.
That's
And
amazing.
pre-1940, there was 0 type 2 diabetics. Diabetic endocrinologist told me that. Pre-1940, 0. So I was one of the first in the world, if not the only one, to say diabetes was a created disease. Type 1 diabetes, and my wife is type 1. That was an academic exercise way back with Banting and figuring out insulin.
So
1 in 100,000 people had it.
You just said that diabetes type 2 is a created disease.
Absolutely.
Because of what happened to our food supply right around that time is when we added so many, I think there's 1,300 additives that the CDC allows right now, and most of them are toxic to our body. Our body can't recognize them. They cause inflammation, and then we're eating rancid foods, and we get put glyphosate in the mix. The cell membranes don't have a chance.
And then live on carbohydrate.
Yeah.
And live on processed carbohydrate. Oh, that's a big one, because that's inflammatory. Diabetes is known as an aging disease.
Yeah.
You have elevated blood sugar levels. Everything grows in it too. A lot of women get yeast infections all the time. You're a carbivore.
Yeah.
Cut carbs, that goes away. Same thing for a guy. Urinary tract infections from overgrowth of yeast. It's from the carbs. How do you make bread? A little bit of yeast, flour, and a little bit of sugar. Boom.
Yeah, it's wild. I do a lot with the ketogenic fasting diet.
Yes, excellent.
And
these oils will help patients stay on a keto diet too. They automatically fulfill the cravings for carbs. And this is another thing. If you think about it, your body wants these oils in the unprocessed, fully functional, organic state. It can't get them. So you eat lunch, and what's the body going to do 3 hours later if you eat the standard junk food? All I can do is make you hungry again and pray I'm going to get some of these oils in the next batch of food. Well, of course, you never do. So what happens? Eat, crave, eat, crave, eat, crave. Then your brilliant nutritionists come along and say, oh, you need to be eating 6 times a day.
Exactly.
You eat more than 2-3 times a day, you are blowing out your pancreas, because your pancreas was designed to spit out insulin twice a day. It doesn't store it. So it is hellacious. Our government did this to us with horrible recommendations, especially with the saturated fat killing you. It's the most unscientific nonsense in the world. One jackass, Ansel Keys, is the one that did it with this cholesterol stuff, and a liar. He took 7 countries instead of 14, and with the 7 that he chose, you got a nice straight line. The higher the cholesterol, the higher the heart disease. Well, when you put the other 7 countries in there was no line. So he was guilty of misleading everybody, and this one guy is guilty of millions of deaths.
Wow. That is amazing.
So you can't go by it because everybody says. My big joke, Doc, is if everybody says it, take it to the bank, it's wrong. The minute everybody says, you're told, or everybody knows, forget it's wrong.
Yeah.
Everything in nutrition and health, in virtually everything. But like I say, these oils are the biggest nutritional deficiency in the world. And with the food processing, the margarine came in. So it completely shunts the oxygen. And if anybody's concerned with cancer, and they should be, Otto Warburg conclusively showed lack of cellular oxygen was the cause of cancer.
Right.
Okay? Cellular, not cholesterol.
And also, cancer lives on sugar and glucose and not on ketones.
Absolutely. It's its number one food. It's like a dumb yeast.
Yeah.
Cancer is not a foreign invader. It is a defense mechanism so we don't die. So what happens if the cell is deprived of oxygen? A couple of possible outcomes. I get so deprived, the cell dies. The other choice is let it live without the oxygen, but is there a price to pay?
Yeah.
And the answer is yeah, it can go on what's called glycolysis, meaning running on sugar, but it produces very little energy. And you get very little energy. And there's a big trade-off. It's like a dumb yeast living on sugar. The intelligence is lost. So cancer takes years to develop. And if you oxygenate at the cellular level, you're not getting cancer.
Yeah.
Warburg showed that. And in 53 and 55, scientists showed that in America, they deprived heart cells of oxygen intermittently over 2 years. The ones that were deprived of it all got cancer. The ones that were not deprived of it, no cancer. So they didn't know what to do with it, but these oils, because of Campbell's work in 76, are the answer to cellular oxygenation, which is the biggest defense against cancer you can possibly get. And that's why I'm getting nowhere with cancer either.
Yeah, so we're about up to a next break, and I just want to tell everybody, because a lot of people on the radio, they come in and out, and some people on KSCO let the radio go full time. We're talking with Professor Brian Peskin. We're talking about correct oils that help your body versus oils that can poison your body, and the misleading media about fish oils out there, and that they're really not healthy for you. Our body doesn't need them. And when we come back from the break, I would like to discuss the immune system and COVID and how things like that work. So we're about to take a break. This is Dr. Duncan McCollum, McCollum Family Chiropractic. And again, I just want to offer anybody my new book, New Hope for Sciatica. Go to McCollumWellness.com and you can download it for free. The unabridged version, the one that Amazon would not put up. And there's a lot of great information about a lot of things we're talking about today. So we'll be back in just a couple minutes, and we'll see you in a minute. Okay, we're back, and I have Professor Brian Peskin here, and he's an MIT graduate who's turned all of his expertise to studying pharmacology as far as making healing medicines, I don't know if that's the right word, out of plants. And one thing that you have created, you've created some incredible fish or omega-6 parent oils, and maybe you could tell us briefly about that, and tell us how that will boost the immune system, and then how our immune system can help us with the next quote COVID outbreak, or any thoughts you might have about wearing masks. I mean, this is something we've been working on for the last several weeks. I think it really deserves your opinion in this area.
Yeah, I've been using it, so we have that here too. But the oils, the first thing is, again, the parent omega-6, parent omega-3 are the brick and mortar of every cell in your body, all 100 trillion. So the analogy would be you have a house where its walls are falling down because of the structure of the house, and you throw some nice paint on it. Well, you didn't fix the underlying structure.
Wow.
And if the underlying structure isn't fixed first, you're gone. The second thing is, because we have so much problem with blood flow today, people aren't getting enough blood flow. It's not hitting the frontal lobes of the brain. That's why people don't have compassion, empathy. You're seeing all this road rage. This isn't mental cases because they're mentally ill. They are. But I tell everybody it's physiologic. You don't get it. You're getting these screwed up oils. The PGE1 is a vasodilator, and also prostacyclin is a vasodilator, so it opens those blood vessels to get the oxygen and nutrients there. So what you need to look for in a supplement is 1-to-1 ratio to 2.5-to-1 in favor of parent omega-6 to omega-3. It has to be organic. You need a supplement with a mixture that includes a GLA-based oil like evening primrose oil, because you want to bypass that delta-6 desaturase to get the PGE1. So if anybody or any patient has an impairment in that pathway, you fixed it. So it's no problem. You have to have a p-anisine level of less than 4. Fish oil, by the way, is 19, and this is a toxic aldehyde. So people say all the time, well, my fish oil is the most prime. First thing is, it's wrong. You're not a fish living in the sea. So any marine oil, I don't care if it's krill, oyster, squid, you name whatever the heck it is, it's all the wrong stuff. We're not living in the sea. We're living at 98.6 on the planet.
And your oil that you introduced to us several years ago, the Pure Form oil,
I'm a formulator, so I have
yeah.
science, and I consult with companies to do things, but I can't recommend any specific product.
Yeah.
But I can tell people what they need in the product.
Yeah, and you've got, well, regardless, you've got some amazing products that we carry at our office, and if people are interested, they can find out about it. I want to go to, you were talking about the frontal lobe a minute ago.
Yes.
Oxygen getting to the frontal lobe, and how if you don't have the right oils, you can't get enough oxygen there. But hey, what about breathing CO2 all day? Wearing a mask.
Well, if you wear a mask, absolutely. I read a lot about this stuff from scientists, because doctors and colleagues around the world are always sending me things. So I look at, somebody's background, what they've done. But the mask, if you just think about it, I mean, you don't even need to be a scientist. Number one, a virus is so small. Just think of it as a pencil point, and then you have your huge computer screen. So to the virus, you have the huge computer screen. It's an open door in front of it. The weave on the mask isn't that tight, and it can't be. It can only go so small. So the virus sees an open door. So that's doing nothing to protect anybody. You can think it all you want. You're delusional. I have to tell you the truth. The second thing, now, if you're going to spit, fine, cover your mouth. I don't have a problem with somebody wearing a mask on their mouth. That's what I do when I walk around. It's not on my nose. It's on my mouth. So if you sneeze or something, fine. It's not going to bother you. In the nose, nothing. Second thing is, with that mask on, you are breathing in carbon dioxide. The air transfer is not that good. Again, you're choking it off. Take a handkerchief and put it in front of your nose and try and breathe through it. Well, the mask is even worse. So you're breathing in your own carbon dioxide, which means you're knocking the heck out of your immune system. You have no oxygen. You're going to be exhausted. I talk to doctors all the time doing surgery. They're making them exhausted. And because your immune system's down, mark my words, when December comes and the regular flu season comes, you're going to see a sickness level, because these idiots have created it that you've never before seen with lowered immune systems. And don't blame it on this, but it's not the virus. Everybody's used to viruses all the time. It's what they're telling you to do. The other thing is, you can get dermatitis, all kinds of problems for having a mask on all the time. And things can grant mask. I have a wet breath and I have a wet nose, if I'm breathing in and out all day long. If you don't wash that darn thing, if you don't spray hydrogen peroxide on it, it's a breeding ground for bacteria and other viruses. So you got to be insane to come up with this, but I know why they're doing it, because they don't know what to tell you to do, and they got to act like we're doing something.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's just right. My whole thing is the immune system comes in. When I first saw this, people presented it to me, and I started analyzing, and it was 95% of the exposures have no problem. The biggest problems, and this was in New Orleans, diabetics. Well, diabetics have decreased problems, decreased anti-inflammatory because of the PGE1, and a problem in the immune system. So interleukin, is down, and all the things that fight. It's not just antibodies that fight viruses and bacteria. There's a whole system. It's unbelievable how this works.
Our bodies are so amazing.
They are. So you want to be exposed to this, and your immune system will learn to recognize it, and you're not sick. But when I saw that, it was, my goodness, what's happening with this thing? This is very different, because it's not respiratory. The people in New York were putting everybody on respirators and killing them all. And then it was the doctors, the ER doctors would say, these people have blue toes, blue feet. That's hypoxia. It's like they were on Mount Everest and I threw them on the ground. What they did was oxygen. So now they're not using the damn ventilator, respirators. They're putting in oxygen under low pressure, and that's the answer. So if you take these oils, you've got the cellular oxygen just like that. But 95% of the people, no symptoms. You ever get a regular flu and have no symptoms? No, you're sick as heck. Common cold, by the way, is a coronavirus. So these should not be causing the concern unless you have a patient with comorbidities, heart disease, that kind of stuff. But they should be sectioned off anyway. We've never had a place where healthy people are told to quarantine. That's about the dumbest thing you could ever do. If
Yeah.
you quarantine, all you do is reinfect yourself. So you're just breathing in your same stuff. Best thing in the world to do is be outside, get in public places, and it's no issue.
Yeah. The thing
If
is
you
that,
have the oils in there for your immune system. Without that, I'm not making comments. Now, the mask, anybody can do. But
yeah,
I travel everywhere. I could care less who I'm around. I could be right next to somebody that's got this thing. Big deal. You just don't get sick. You don't get flus. You take these oils.
the bottom line is, getting our immune system strong. And, you were talking
You
about
got it.
what happens with the mask. The CO2 knocks down our own key helper cells.
Oh,
It knocks down our own immune system. And then we're
yes.
breathing our own carbon dioxide that wears us out. And then and I wanted to say something here, not only do our adrenal glands, like I say, the way that this has been marketed, it's like you have an invisible tiger that you can't see, touch, feel.
Fight or flight all day long. You're absolutely right.
Chronically in fight or flight. So your body
Right,
shuts down the immune system already because it's running. Your digestive
right.
system goes down. Your mental acuity goes down because you don't need that. You got to run from the tiger. We don't
You
know where
got it.
it's at. And the other thing is in California, they want 3-year-olds to be wearing masks now.
You're
And
insane.
these poor kids don't have a life. They're not going to grow up playing in the dirt like you and I did. And they can't even hug a friend. They have to be worried about their friend coming over and touching them.
They don't care about the science. The science is here. It's around the world. I see it. Any of them can see it. But the problem today in America is that everything is political. It's horrible. I remember George Carlin, before he passed away, was a comic. He goes, when I grew up, we had an immune system. We would be in the river, the dirty, polluted river, but we had an immune system. What you get now is a kid that sneezes once, you bring me to the emergency ward. He hit it right in the head. There's no immune system. And by not exposing people to anything, you encourage that. You want a kid to be exposed to everything.
Yeah.
Having no measles as a kid, to me, is horrible. You want to be exposed to that so your immune system can develop.
Yeah.
If there's no stimulus, it will get nothing. But you hit a big one. Fight or flight all day long. You get the virus, you're going to die. You're going to die. You're going to die 100 times. That's an absolute lie. The vast majority, nothing. And they're putting people into fight or flight, and the blood flow is down because it doesn't go to anything except the muscles so you can run away from the tiger. People I talk to, they can't even think anymore. Ask them something, they just have this glazed over look. They're in their own little world. It is horrible what's happened with this. And this is nothing compared to what's really going to come along down the pike. What are you going to do then? Shut everything down then?
Yeah, it's crazy. We've got about 5 minutes left. So I want to just tell the audience, this is Professor Brian Peskin, amazing guy. We've met several times at seminars, and I've always enjoyed what you have to say. You're so bright, and you're really—
I've got a lot of this on my website too, if people want to look at it. It's just my name, brianpeskin.com. So B as in boy, RIAN, P as in parent, ESKIN.com. They can see about COVID, the first 2 papers on the top left. They can see a nice little lecture that I recently gave 2019 in Boston on Lyme disease. But I go through all the pathways. So if it works to help Lyme disease patients, if you don't have that, just imagine where your immune system is. And like you said, it's all the immune system. And if my immune system is much higher than yours, I can take more abuse.
Right.
That's where you want to be. It's not that I can't have this, I can't have that. I can take more problems, and that is the key.
And that's where we want to be anyway. We want to develop our muscle, to be strong. Our immune system is like a muscle. We want it as strong as it can be. We want to challenge it, and we've grown up challenging it. I think
exactly.
The kids that grow up, in a sanitary house with never touching dirt's immune system is a lot weaker than the guys that are out there. And with herd immunity with this thing, with the COVID virus, that's what we want. We want people to be exposed to it.
Exactly. They're doing the opposite thing. They are doing the opposite thing by having you stay at home and breathe your own air. So it's the dumbest possible thing you could do.
And they're dragging it out, and they're scaring to death the population. They're breaking a country
for nothing
financially.
If you have a problem, sequester the problem. People, that's what a nursing home did. That's what an old age home did. And then these people shoved the patients with the flu in there and the COVID stuff. Dumbest thing you could ever do. That's where your deaths came from.
Well, you know what? we hear people say, oh, be considerate of others and wear a mask, but there's no foundation for it. And it's
No.
people have been, unfortunately, I hate to use the word brainwashed, but they've been given this data in such fear that they think that me, a healthy person wearing a
I
mask,
agree.
if I'm susceptible, I should wear a mask, and I shouldn't, if I have comorbidities, be careful, but we're hurting the world by doing this. We're hurting the sick people by not allowing us to get herd immunity. We're going to make everybody sicker in the long run. And
Absolutely.
then the fear is worse than anything.
Absolutely. And you're making the right now not real sick person by putting on the mask sicker, which means he can then go and give somebody a problem.
Yeah.
You would intuitively think the mask does something until you think how small the virus is.
Yes.
It's you can't even see it. I mean, it's a millionth of the size of the weave. So again, the virus particle compared with the weave on the mask, it's an open door, and there's nothing you're going to do to stop that, nor do you even need to. Wow. These viruses are around us all the time. By the way, you probably have 30 viruses in your bloodstream right now. You have pneumonia in your mouth. Why don't I have a full-blown case of pneumonia? Because my immune system is up here, and the problem is here. Same thing with all these viruses and anything. That's what people aren't understanding.
Yeah.
And the science is all here if people spend the time to do it. I hope they check out my website.
Yeah, Don, give us your website again. It's Brian Peskin.
It's brianpeskin.com. B as in boy, R-I-A-N. P as in parent, ESKIN.com. And you can
it's your book
check out the papers.
Where do they get your book?
The book is on the website too, so it's on the homepage. They could take a look at that. They could click on, see some of the testimonials by physicians around the world. Right. And it tells you everything about these oils and the science of why you need it. But it's very readable. It was written for physicians, but it's very, very readable.
Yeah. So we're about to end here. I just want to thank Professor Peskin for coming on today. He's given us amazing information about omega-3s and how they're not healthy for you, despite what you might think or been told, and how parent omega-6s are the ones that we need, and parent omega-3s. And
yes, parents.
Yeah, and we're going to, this show will be on ksco.com on Stepping In. If you want to re-listen to it, you can get to it. Doc, I'm going to say thank you very much, and we'll see you soon.